Imagine sitting at a royal banquet. The emperor smiles, lifts his goblet, then orders you to eat what you think is chicken. But it isn't. It's cat. And that's just the beginning. What kind of ruler would do something like that? One who didn't just enjoy power, but found joy in pain. One who turned royal dinners into horror shows, then played with the severed heads of animals like they were toys. Welcome to one of the darkest chapters in Southeast Asian history. Today we dive into the twisted world of Lê Long Đĩnh, a Vietnamese emperor so cruel, so unpredictable, that even his own court feared every breath he took. He ruled for only 4 years, but in that short time, his cruelty became legendary. From serving cats at royal feasts to public tortures that entertained the palace, to a death so mysterious it erased him from official memory. This is a story most history books avoid. In this video, you'll discover how Lê Long Đĩnh rose to power in a time of civil war and chaos. Terrifying stories from inside his palace that left guests scarred and servants silent, and how his madness ended suddenly and perhaps deservedly. These are the hidden pages of Vietnam's past. Strange, disturbing, and 100% real. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why even his name became a whisper of fear. So grab your curiosity and your courage, because we're going deeper than textbooks ever dare. Welcome to History Screen, the place where the past comes alive in the most unexpected ways. If you love forgotten tales, dark empires, and strange truths, hit that subscribe button and let's uncover history's shadows together. The early Lê dynasty was a time of chaos. Vietnam, still known then as GC Viet, had just begun to find its footing after centuries of Chinese domination. The Lê family had helped restore independence, but peace was fragile and the throne was never truly secure. After the death of Emperor Lê Hồng in the year 1005, a deadly struggle broke out between his sons. There were 10 of them, and all of them wanted power. For 8 long months, civil war gripped the royal court. Brothers fought brothers, blood spilled not on the battlefield, but inside the palace itself. Ministers switched loyalties overnight. No one knew who would survive the week then. A 19-year-old boy stepped forward. His name was Lê Long Đĩnh. First few took him seriously. He was the youngest son. He had spent most of his youth away from politics, living in comfort, enjoying the luxuries of court life. He was known more for his charm than for any military skill or leadership. Some even described him as lazy, spoiled, indulgent. But all that changed quickly. In a stunning move, Long Đĩnh turned on his brothers. One by one they fell, some in battle, others in cold executions. In just a few months he eliminated all rivals. The boy who once lounged in gardens now sat on the imperial throne, his hands stained with family blood. But something was different about him. Even in a time when kings killed for power, his method stood out. There was a kind of pleasure in how he did it, a performance. His punishments were slow, public, and often cruel. He didn't just want to win. He wanted others to suffer while watching, and that was only the beginning. Soon after taking power, whispers began to spread through the court. The new emperor had strange habits. He would summon officials for meetings, then burn their feet as a joke. He forced scholars to kneel for hours on spikes. Others were bound, whipped, and left to rot, all in the name of entertainment. Some began to compare him to Rome's worst rulers too. Caligula, who once declared himself a living god and ordered mass executions at banquets, the Commodus, who dressed as Hercules and slaughtered prisoners in the arena for sport. But this wasn't ancient Rome. This was Vietnam, and the horrors were just beginning. Lê Long Đĩnh didn't hide his actions. In fact, he seemed to enjoy the shock he'd throw feasts for nobles and suddenly turn them into scenes of violence. What started as a celebration could end in bloodshed. Officials learned to keep silent. Servants dared not look him in the eye. One official who recorded these events wrote that Long Đĩnh cruelty was beyond reason. Another described his palace as a hall of screens. Some believed he was mentally ill. Others believed he was simply evil. He also loved humiliation. One day, a respected monk was brought before him. The emperor ordered him to recite sacred texts while being beaten. Another time, he had a prisoner tied to a post and forced musicians to play while the man begged for mercy. Long Hun smiled through it all, but in public he wore a different mask. He gave gifts to temples, he met with foreign envoys. He even funded the building of schools. Outsiders saw a generous young king. But inside the walls of the palace, the truth was darker than anyone imagined. People began to fear even the sound of his footsteps. His presence was unpredictable. One moment laughter, the next screaming, and yet no one could stop him. He ruled by fear, and fear-worked ministers obeyed him blindly. Generals pledged loyalty without question. Common people stayed silent, hoping he would. Never noticed him. He was now in full control, but cruelty has a way of growing. It feeds on itself. What satisfied yesterday no longer thrills today. As Long Hun's taste for violence deepened, his imagination became more twisted and more deadly power. For some, it's a duty. For others, it becomes a playground. For Emperor Lê Long Hun, it was something darker. It was entertainment. He didn't just rule Vietnam. He performed over it, and the court became his theater of fear. Witnesses say he would order executions as if picking from a dinner menu. He chose who would die, how, and when, with little or no reason. Burning victims alive using bundles of hay was one of his favorite methods. It was quick, loud, and the smell, they said, clung to the palace walls, but that wasn't enough. Sometimes he made it worse. Long Hun once forced men to kneel under the sun for hours covered in oil and set fire to them with a single glance. In other cases, he tied captives upside down, whipping them while laughing. With his ministers, no one was safe. Peasants, soldiers, even scholars yet. Among all his twisted pleasures, one story stands out: a banquet feast. It looked like a celebration. Musicians played, wine flowed. The emperor smiled, charming his guests, but the meat, it wasn't chicken, it wasn't duck, it was cat roasted season, served as if it were just another royal delicacy. No one dared ask. No one dared stop eating, because they knew who they were dealing with. And then came the moment that turned fear into dread. After the meal, Lê Long Hun stood up and summoned his servants. They brought him the heads, severed heads of the cats, charred some half-skin eyes still open. He picked one up, turned it in his hands. Then he played with it, tossed it like a toy, spoke to it, laughed. Some said he named them. Others said he used them like puppets, mocking his own guests in their voices. Officials froze, not just because of what they saw, but because they knew their reaction was being watched. Smile. Too little, and you might be next. Look away, and you insult the emperor. Show disgust, and you might end up in tomorrow's fire. This wasn't just cruelty. It was a message. The emperor could and would do anything. But why cats? That's what haunted many in Vietnamese culture. Cats were never considered sacred, but they weren't food either. Killing them for sport, especially in such a public, humiliating way, was beyond taboo. It was psychological warfare. By forcing his officials to eat cats, he wasn't just testing their loyalty, he was erasing their dignity. By playing with their severed heads, he reminded them, your fear is mine to shape. The court became a palace of silence. Whispers died in throats. Eyes avoided the emperor's gaze. Slowly, what had once been a royal hall turned into a theater of survival. No one knew what would happen next. By the time Lê Long Hun entered his early 20s, something had shifted. His body, once strong, unpredictable, and full of dark energy, was beginning to fail him. Historical accounts describe him as suffering from intense pain. Some say he couldn't even sit upright on the throne. He held court lying on his side. That's how he got one of his nicknames, the Lying Emperor. But the nickname had a double meaning. It wasn't just about posture. It was about deceit. Inside the palace, no one told the truth. The fear was too strong. Ministers lied to survive. Officials smiled. Through terror, even whispers could lead to death. That's why people began calling his regime the Lying Court. It wasn't just the emperor who was unstable. His entire court had turned into a stage of fear and falsehoods. Number one knew who would be next. Would it be a guest at dinner? A servant who spoke out of turn? A general who grew too popular? Some say he began hallucinating. Others claim the illness made him more paranoid. What's clear is his power was slipping away, and everyone around him could feel it. Then in the year 1009 it happened. At just 23 years old, Lê Long Đĩnh died there, are different theories about how some blame disease, possibly a tumor or epilepsy. Others whisper about assassination, maybe poison, maybe betrayal from within his own ranks. But what happened after his death was almost more telling than the way he died. He was never given a temple name. In Vietnamese tradition, every emperor, no matter how flawed, is honored with a posthumous title, but not Lê Long Đĩnh. It was as if the court wanted to erase him, as if the dynasty itself wanted to forget. And in a way, that's exactly what happened soon. After his death, the Lost dynasty took over. The new rulers quickly set to work cleansing the memory of the mad emperor. They painted him as a disgrace. They banned discussions about his crimes. They rewrote the official history to focus on peace reform and Buddhist values. It was a full reset. The Lost dynasty wanted to restore dignity and control. And the best way to do that was by burying the past deep and quiet. But history has a strange way of surviving. Whispers of the cat. Banquets still made their way into local folklore. Stories of torture, of fire, of games played with heads. They lived on not in royal scrolls, but in the words of common people. The reaction from those who lived through his reign: relief, horror, and disbelief. Some wept in secret. Others celebrated in silence. A few, it said, simply disappeared, perhaps unable to live with what they had witnessed. But for the people of GC's Viet one thing was clear. A chapter had ended, one written in fear and cruelty and in blood. No time would move on. No one would ever forget the emperor who turned dinner into a nightmare. Power can build kingdoms, but in the wrong hands, it can twist the human mind. We've seen that in the short, violent reign of Lê Long Đĩnh, ruler who turned fear into policy and cruelty into performance. He rose to the throne young. He ruled through terror, and he left behind a legacy that his own dynasty tried to erase. From serving cat meat at royal banquets, to playing with severed heads, to ruling from a lying position while his empire crumbled in fear, Lê Long Đĩnh remains one of the most disturbing emperors in Southeast Asian history. But it leads us to deeper questions. What drives someone to such cruelty? Does power reveal the monster or create it? And how many more rulers across history have hidden there horrors behind royal walls? We have seen echoes of this before. Caligula in Rome, who made his horse a senator and killed on whim. Commodus, who fought as a gladiator while Rome rotted behind him. But Lê Long Đĩnh did something different. His terror wasn't loud and theatrical. It was quiet, calculated, and deeply personal. He didn't just punish enemies. He broke those closest to him. His palace was silent, but the fear was deafening. So now we ask you, what shocked you the most? Was it the cat? Feast of lies at court? Or the eerie way he was erased after death? Let us know in the comments. If this tale opened your eyes to a part of history you never knew, there's so much more waiting, because the past is full of kings, queens, and rulers who wore crowns but ruled like monsters called to action. If you enjoyed uncovering this dark chapter, hit subscribe to join us here at History Screen, because history isn't just dates and battles. It's secret shadows and stories the world tried to forget. And we're just getting started. Stay tuned for more untold history.